Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the weekly live stream for the Rest of Your Orbis channel. We're exploring crystal palaces, and I'd like to extend a heartfelt greetings to all channel members, prime explorers, members of the Griffins Club, explorers, all viewers, and all others joining us. We're going to be exploring the account of the crystal palaces. And I'll just greet you as I talk to you and see you. It's good to see you, Jamie. Hey, Kitch. Hey, Adam Baum. Welcome. Hey, Kathy. Hey, Jennifer, you can just hit that join button if you're keen on purchasing a membership. If you want to let me know, just talk to me after. And let's see, who else do we have? Sovereign, Invisible, and Traceable, good to see you. Hey, Tracy Lynn, welcome. Hey, Chassis, good to see you. All right. Hey, Sky Sage, good to see you. So when we're talking about crystal palaces, and let's get our first information banner up here. The first crystal palace we're going to look at is the quintessential crystal palace, or the baseline crystal palace in London. The wondrous crystal palace that was constructed originally in Hyde Park in 1851. It was subsequently moved, and then it burned down in 1936. Now, why was this crystal palace constructed, you might ask? Hey, Larry, good to see you. Hey, Kairos, thanks for joining us. The Crystal Palace was originally constructed as the main and only building for the Great Exhibition of 1851. So they wanted to construct a building where they were going to hold this exhibition, and the whole point of the exhibition was to showcase the incredible wonders and achievements of the Industrial Revolution, at least the first couple phases of it, because you might recall that historians decided to change how many phases there were. There was another phase after the U.S. Civil War. Hey, Lisa, good to see you. Thanks for joining us from Wisconsin. And in any event, it showcases a combination of construction styles. So supposedly it's ironwork with glass. That's what they tell us it was. Yes, iron and glass is flammable, like everything else. Even though it didn't burn in the 1800s, it's probably about the only surprise about this so far. So you get a couple different looks. Hey, Rebecca, thanks for joining us. Hey, Warrior. Yes, good question there, Jamie. Who was the glassworks that actually manufactured these panes? Well, give me 1 second. I will pull it up because it's quite an interesting little story about it. But it was the Chance Brothers, and the Chance Brothers were another one of those random companies that just developed in the 19th century or the 1800s, originally founded by Robert Lucas Chance, and then it was not a very successful company because, surprise, surprise, there apparently wasn't a demand for glass initially. But then his brother came in and bailed him out, James Chance, and provided the money, which everybody seemed to have a lot of in the 1800s, and they were the ones who supposedly manufactured all the glass for the Crystal House. So, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah. Well, and when you do the analysis in terms of how much glass they had to produce and how quickly, it doesn't really make any sense. I mean, a glass company being founded and then funded in the 1800s is rather problematic because where was the demand? Well, they try to tell us that we had some buildings we were building. There were also all these people that were building their observatories. Yeah, Jamie, exactly. There were also all these people who were building their observatories. You might recall from the exploration of the Carrington event, everybody was an amateur astronomer in the 1800s, and so they had business with producing glass. And then they tell us they produced the glass for this Crystal Palace in London, and then it was only there till 1851. They didn't have a plan beyond that, so then they moved it. So I thought we'd go through and take a look initially at this interesting palace. All right, Lisa. Oh, yeah. Well, there's plenty of places. Maybe go take a look at that observatory for us. But in any event, what are the chances? Broken glass fallacy. I knew there'd be some good comments on this. I want to make sure I get them highlighted. Yes, they probably had something to hide there. There's no doubt about it. Of course I am Kairos. I mean, just call it the 1800s logistical cheat code. You can do anything. You've got endless labor and endless logistics. Materials can be found anywhere and everywhere. People will start businesses even though there's no demand for the material that they're producing, and they'll be successful, and money is everywhere to be found. We just needed to be alive during the 1800s, and any one of us could start a business and be successful. Then they also charge your taxes by the number of windows. Yeah, wouldn't that be something, Kathy? The observatory in Lake Geneva, Yerkes Observatory. It's down there, and it's got the telescope from World's Fair. So by all means, if you can get on site there, that would be wonderful. I'd definitely like to go back to that. Oh, I've always got something funny to say about it. So let's take a look at some more images of the lovely Crystal Palace in London. We do actually have some plans, if you can call them that, although these aren't the final plans. They've also got some sketches of them, which are sketchy, if you'll excuse the pun, but I can't help myself. Now, the interesting thing in some of the images is that you'll see there's a little bit more of a baseline behind some of it. Now, the park allegedly remains, but the main structure itself burned down in 1936. And some of the pictures aren't exactly the best because they're from the 1800s. Of course, we don't really have a picture of Lucas Chance, but he was just a glassmaker who'd want to see a picture of him. And I'm speaking in all sarcasm, but I also had these towers around it, and they say these were water towers. At least that's what we're told. So some beautiful images with it. Now this is a better image, and here you can actually see both water towers. So what are your thoughts looking at this image? And isn't this a good picture? Not sure I have an exact date on this one. Some of them I have 1860s, others I have 1870s, and there's conflicting accounts on when the pictures are from. But this is a little bit better one. But what are your thoughts with these towers, this giant Crystal Palace? And by the way, the area of this Crystal Palace, let me get this displayed here real quick because I went through the trouble of punching up this information for y'all so you can get an idea. So they called it the Great Exhibition Building. Very long and an interior height of 128 feet. And it was 3 times the interior space of St. Paul's at that time, the great cathedral in London. Yeah, mooring towers, no doubt about it. Indeed. Well, and not just that chassis, but how do you make so much of it in such a short amount of time? Because they supposedly built this in a very short amount of time. And when you do the analysis on how many panes of glass these guys had to produce, it's rather off the charts. So, well, of course, you don't need storage tanks, and we always say they're water towers. There, brother Adam. So, what do you expect? Ah, they needed the water towers for whatever they grew inside the glass. Yeah, that's what we'd be told, but recall that they tell us it was originally for just showcasing exhibition items, but that's problematic as well. Hmm, it's a good question. We'll never know because it burned down, much like the other original Crystal Palaces, although we do have one bona fide Crystal Palace that did survive. So, yeah, exactly. Spoken into existence. You are correct. Hey, Albie, good to see you. Hey, Battlestar Terra, good to see you. Yeah, I know. And it'd be great for an on-site exploration. No doubt about it. Well, that's what we were talking about there, Andra, is would they actually have the capability to produce that amount of glass? That's questionable because they'd never done it before. But, it's the 1800s, and so that's why we were joking about the logistics and the ability to do it. So, in any event, yes. So they just called it the Great Exhibition Building, and 3 times the interior space is St. Paul's, and very impressive structure. Yeah, exactly. Well, the underground bit and then apparently the train station. I do have an image of that, or should I say the subway station or whatever you want to call it. So, I always get my American and English terms intermixed. I can't imagine why I do that. So just bear with me. Anyways, so going on and looking at some more images. So here's a pretty good picture that actually shows you how the exhibition hall looked or may have looked. And you can see you have all kinds of space. I don't know if we have an individual there or not, but you can definitely believe that it's easily 3 times the interior space of St. Paul's, but some of the ironwork supposedly. And the question I might ask all of you is, do you think this was originally crystal or was this some other material? And maybe the other question is, was this an old world building? Was this a contemporary era building? Or was this something in between? And what are your thoughts on all that? Yeah, just 2,800 degrees. Good call out there, Julia. Piece of cake. So obviously we can easily believe that iron just burning in the fire, right? Just don't ask any questions. Hmm. Well, officially it hasn't changed that much, B. Hendricks. Officially, but again, go off of that as you will. And again, I always wonder if it's a different material than glass because they called it crystal. And there's a little bit of an inconsistency with that as we go forward. Hey, Jacob, good to see you. Yeah, I agree. It does give that hangar vibe, doesn't it? We just need a lot of books to throw in there too, don't we? Get your books and fill out the crystal hall, and you've got everything you need. Yeah, that's the way I'm leaning, Battlestar. I'm not wondering though if it was something that they had the remnants of and then they reconstructed a little bit, or maybe it was relatively intact. I mean, we don't know what happened where. We can make the supposition that in the United Kingdom or Great Britain at that time, there were certain locations that did survive. You remember our exploration last week when we looked at Newcastle upon Tyne and we saw how intact a lot of areas in Newcastle were, or still are to this day, I should say. Airship hangars used glass heating. Oh, that's a good call out there, Larry. Good observation, too. World's Fair stuff. Yeah, exactly, Peter. And it keeps coming up. And all these crystal palaces that we're looking at were affiliated with World's Fairs or exhibitions. Although they didn't call this one a World's Fair, it was the Great Exhibition, or so they said. Now, these were some of the plans that were submitted, and I'm just venting here a little bit. I think if I had $1 for every time everybody tells me, well, that's just what architects do. They just design plans all the time, and that's all they do. I guess they're never on site making sure that these miracles happen, even though we have conflicting accounts on that. But supposedly, this was one of the original proposals for the Great Industrial Exhibition. You notice it's got a dome on it. Now, of course, they didn't go with the dome. And then we've got a little bit more on the plan down here. And of course, remember, this is on the layout at Hyde Park. This isn't in its subsequent location. The move is pretty funny, too, when we look at that. And this is after it's moved to Sydenham Hill. I think I'm pronouncing that properly. Many different pronunciations go through my head, but isn't this an interesting perspective of it? Because you can kind of see it a little bit here, but then it must be closer to the tower. You can't see the tower from this perspective, but isn't the tower interesting? Because we don't often think of the towers, but they're rather unique architecture themselves. So I know this image that we're looking at now doesn't get seen very often. Yeah, no doubt. World Science Fairs. No, it doesn't seem possible. Not now, and certainly not then. I'm with you on that one, Risha, but that's what they tell us they did. It's all good, Robert. Good to see you. Well, good to see you, Alan. Thanks for joining us. I'm with you, Cecilia. I mean, I think that the fact that they even call it crystal, I mean, maybe that's even a hint. Is it some kind of crystal? Because you might recall in one of the very early explorations, or perhaps you haven't seen it, we looked at the crystal empire, or the concept of using crystal as an energy source. So, well, we've got some images. We'll take a look at that, Andrew, although make of it what you will, as I always like to say, because, they're just images. They don't have the final proof on anything. It's just clues. Well, they still try to run the whole exhibition thing, KC933. So is it really a World's Fair, or is it just it's an exhibition where we're showcasing technology? They seem to have blurred a little bit, much like with the change that we observed in the 1930s. That's how World's Fairs changed. So, yeah, good call out there, Westman. Yeah, what could be going on in the background? I'm not sure. Well, thanks for joining us, Panda. Hey, that's a good one, I am Kairos. Yeah, just get Scotty to work on the computer and he'll punch up the transparent aluminum formula with Mr. Nichols. Yes, I remember that scene very well. Here's a nice little frontal shot of it where you can kind of see the quote unquote glass, although is that really what we're looking at? I mean, it's hard to tell. We've got old black and white photos. They could really say or mean anything. Here, I'll move the banner so you can see it. I guess you can see it just fine. I understand. Oh, you know it, Laura. And I'll bet you if it was still standing, it would be a perfect wedding venue, wouldn't it? Minbar was Crystal Cities. That's true. I forgot about that. The Minbari in Babylon 5, another overlap. Lead crystal melts at a mere 621 degrees Fahrenheit, much lower than other glass. And is that really what they made it out of? I guess that's just what we don't know, because we can only look at these old images. But you can get an idea that there was more to these when you see some of the block work with some of the supporting structure. It gives you the hint there was a little bit more going on than what we're told. Now, I just showed this. This is one of the original telegraph machines. I just thought this was fascinating because this is supposedly one of the exhibits that they were featuring there, because you may recall the telegraph was very new. And in fact, the Carrington event that would come in 1859, a good 8 years after they built this beauty, featured disrupted telegraph machines. So make of that what you will. And here's one of our images of its unfortunate burning in 1936. Now, your guess is as good as mine as to why this thing burned down or what was really going on. But What's intriguing about this photo, well, one, their firefighting capabilities, but it was 1936. Coincidentally, the same year that H.G. Wells' Things to Come would come out, his response to the film Metropolis from 1927. But I guess Things to Come was not going to include a Crystal Palace, at least not in London. But you can get an idea that the tower is a little different. It's a rather problematic image with the fire that we have, and who was just sitting around there with a camera to snap it in 1936. Yeah, iron and glass. Well, lead glass maybe. So yeah, another cow story. So yeah, that's a good point there, Sean. Nothing else did ever burn down, did it? And that's the impression they give us, no doubt about it. Well, and is it that? Is it something they were experimenting with, or was it just the remnants of it, Albie? I mean, that's what we don't know. I mean, for all we know, it could have just been their version of a very elaborate and majestic greenhouse. Every structure didn't have to be built up to extremes. But why do we have this interesting moving story? It's as if the fire story is not interesting enough. So, yes, indeed. Oh, yes, that's always a good example. And any other wildfire that we see, not just that one, what's really behind them. Oddly enough, California doesn't seem to be having difficulties with wildfires. Now it's Canada, another sea name, but different location. So make of it what you will. Now here's the real interesting image. Now this is a early type of photo, although what it is exactly, I mean, they tell us what it is, but I question it. They show the tree that was inside here. So what came first, the tree or the palace? Did they build the palace around the tree? Or did they move the palace over the tree? Or was the palace already there and they planted the tree? What are your thoughts? There's another better image of it, but this is one of the early images of it. So this is another one of those things that causes us to ask questions. Indeed. And boy, you'll get quite a doozy with that one, Jamie. No doubt about it. Weird science, You know what? You might be onto something there, F in the chat. That does seem like a 3D image from one of those 3D films. I'm thinking Space Hunter with Molly Ringwald. Anybody see that one? Early 80s film when they tried to bring back 3D. Way before James Cameron did it with Avatar. Oh, yeah. Just as it could have been a healing center. Yeah, that's true. That's very true, Chassie, and a very good point. Good to see you, Aether Topologist. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing, Kathy. Palace was there first, and then bam, they had the tree. Now, was it the same palace? Did they move it? I'm not so keen on the whole movement story. Let's go on to the next one. And they've got several sketches of it, and this seems to be the main drawing or rendering that they show of it. But it's interesting how the sketches that they did don't tend to match the pictures that we have in either location. But you could say, well, the artist was just taking a creative license. Fine. And then a little bit of a painting of some of the exhibits on the inside. Now, we do have a few pictures of some of the exhibits. Looks like we got our favorite cannons down here. Maybe they brought some Dahlgrens from the United States Navy. Everybody's got their top hats. But again, just a painted picture, but still a very compelling picture. Because, was this based on something real? What exactly are they showcasing here? Well, of course, the wonders of the Industrial Revolution. Things that we tend to associate with tall spires. But like I said, it's a drawing, so does it prove anything? No. But does it give us hints? Yes. Now, this is interesting because when you look at this plan, it's clear that this was filled out a little bit later, but it almost gives you the idea that this was based on the plan in terms of where they were setting up all the exhibits, because naturally you don't have any aspect concerning the height. Who needs to know the height of the building? So they say plan, but really I think they mean layout in terms of where everything was. Like you've got Switzerland here. So this reminds us of some of the stuff that we looked at when we explored the expositions or the world's fairs in general. So yeah, I suppose it matches that, but to be fair, anybody could produce a diagram like this and then just write things on it. Just write country names here. And that's about all you've got. Here's the Austria room. Here's the France room. Yeah. The Jersey room. Interesting. So maybe they're not counting on anybody to pay attention. And here's another image that shows it after it burned down. Now, they still had the one water tower that survived. The other one was damaged and they pulled it down. They said that they detonated this water tower during World War II because they were concerned that the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, was using it to guide in on London. Although then they subsequently said that The Luftwaffe was using the Thames, the river, so make of it what you will again. But here you can see a little bit of the infrastructure down here, the entryway and parts of the park that remain. But isn't the rubble very interesting? I mean, what exactly is going on here? Have we seen this before somewhere? Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Well, I don't know. But they did talk about financial problems, Miss Me with it. They did talk about lots of financial problems because of the move, ironically enough. Yeah, I think that goes without saying, but there's a lot of people who will go hell to high water to defend those historical accounts. And I'm not just talking about the random people who comment on videos. I encountered quite a few of them in the university and in other institutions. So, ah, funny you bring that up because the actual architect who we'll look at in a little bit was all about the real banana trees. So, yes, yes, yes. Any event, let me pull up the information here on moving it. We'll go to the next image. So yeah, another image of the fire real quick. Almost looks like it's lit up from the inside. It's hard to say what's really going on there. And so the move. So they moved it from Hyde Park to Sydenham Hill, and it cost them 8 times as much to move it as to build it. At least that's what they tell us. What do you think on that one? Yeah, that's a very good point. Keep people confused and they defer to authority. It works wonders. Oh, funny you bring that up, Sean. Yes. A lot of things disappear during that time frame, Lisa, and then they disappear again in the 1960s with the so-called urban renewal. Well, and you're mentioning that generation from 1902 to 1940, and I'm not denigrating anybody, but you might notice that a lot of times that generation has a reputation for being stoic, and then they even call it the silent generation, and then the greatest generation. But what you tend to get is when you ask people about things about what really happened, oh, they tend to say, we just don't talk about that. For example, I remember asking my grandfather about my great grandfather, and the answer I got was, we just don't talk about that. Okay. And you might recall the orphan train story last year. That's the story I'm talking about. I was trying to get more details about that. Of course, this was years ago. This was before I was into this kind of research. Ah, gotcha, Nora. No, I suppose it didn't, did it? And I think a lot of people whose families were from that generation had the same thing. They just didn't talk about stuff, and you get that feeling of that the fear that was involved with it. Hey, elusive truths, thanks for joining us. Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Frequencies of light and sound, beyond any shadow of a doubt, and it's a very recurring theme as well. But I mean, and the whole story of the move behind it's rather crazy because they said it was only going to be up for 1851. They had to move it, but where exactly we're going to move it to, and then they went against the wishes of the parliament. It's always the same thing. Yeah, of course. Well, putting it on horse and buggy. I'm trying to remember. I think it's about 8 miles straight line distance from Hyde Park to Sydenham Hill. I might be off on that. It's been a while, but it's not that far over distance, but it's far enough. I mean, you have to disassemble the whole thing, move the pieces. We'll just say 10 miles, and then you got to reassemble it. So yeah, and apparently it faced financial troubles, and that's why it supposedly eroded, and nobody paid attention to it. They just saw it as another one of the follies, as they call old world structures over there. So yeah, fully agree with that one. So we'll move on here. There's a better picture of that tree. Let me make sure you still have that one up because my images are doing funny things. But this is a better picture of the tree that we believe came before the building. Or should I say the building came before the tree? A little bit better of an image of it. And look at the floor as well. What exactly is the floor made out of? Is that bricks? Is that some other structure? Did they move all that as well? And when you look closer at the supposed ironwork, again, it gives you the impression of something possibly a little bit more. Now, it could be ironwork, sure, but looking at it in these images, once again, you get the hint maybe it was something more. So what do we think? Two different buildings in two different locations, and the moving story was just another means to burn up cash. Thank you, Crypto Alchemist. I appreciate that. Oh yeah, a lot of glass, like the Mall of America. And you know what's funny is the original Metropolitan Stadium, which was on the site of Mall of America down there in Burnsville, south of Minneapolis. That's an interesting story in and of itself. Back when the Minnesota Vikings played good football. Not saying they don't now. I just had to throw in one professional joke or one professional sports joke. Yep. It does seem like it's two different buildings, and that's always the story. Hey, Sky Sage, good to see you. Hey, Sissy, no problem. You're here now. And I'll just go ahead and, as you're all coming in, be sure you hit that like button, support the channel. I greatly appreciate it. And we're looking at the tree that it seems to have come after whenever this actual Crystal Palace was constructed. So, yes, indeed. And we are looking at the Crystal Palace in London, built 1851, moved, and then burned down in 1936. Ah, I do wonder that too, Battlestar. I do wonder that too. That's a good point. Yeah, that's right, Robert. That's kind of the way I see it now. Is it kayfabe or not? I just don't know. What kind of tree is that? I do wonder. Let's look a little closer. Wonder if it's another one of those trees that we just can't get any more of. Is that a classic English oak? Not an American chestnut. Of course, they would have their day not too long after this. But very interesting surrounding infrastructure with this too. Looks like we got a little fountain here. How big is the fountain? I'm not sure, but you know, it's got to be a pretty big tree to fill up most of the exhibition hall. Now, this is the plan of the palace and the park, and of course, whenever we have parks involved, that's interesting. Oh, look at that. I think I see symbols of the glaive from Kroll. No, I'm just seeing things. Quite a layout, though, on this park. And we can still explore the park. So the palace itself, but definitely odd with the diagram and what's really going on with the supporting infrastructure here. What was the original purpose of these structures? Oh, always good questions to consider. Yeah. The brick floor. Yeah. What kind of brick was it, KC933? I think so, Lisa. I could definitely go along with that. It did look like an elm, didn't it? Hey, RB. Thanks for joining us. Oh, yeah. The Opryland Hotel. Yeah, almost you get that. That's a good comment there. That feeling of the amalgamation of the artificial with the natural. And that seems to be another thing we observe with the old world buildings. No doubt about it. Yeah, beautiful and symmetric. The whole layout. Good point there, Sky Sage. Here's another image of after everything was burned down. And then here we have some brick structures. So this is interesting. But you look a little bit more closely in this image, and again, you get the hint of something a little bit more than just ironwork. So not really sure what to make of it. And you can see the tower back here. But again, another image that has some, how shall we say, fading problems. You know, we typically call it vanilla sky, but I'll just say fading problems because, I mean, where's the bottom of the tower? Oh, it's still smoky. It's debris. Okay, fine, whatever. 1936, so you think we'd have a little bit better photography, but no, maybe not. You can still see the general shape, but what, did all the glass just burn out on it? I mean, is the glass still in there? What happened? Was this after they were starting to demolish it? Hard to say. Ha 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 ha. There you go. And another consistency problem. Fading problems. Good one. Hey, Vaughn, good to see you. Oh, yeah. Right there in front right. It's like he's wearing his little hat there. Hard to say what's going on with that. And so you can see the comparison. And this is an interesting image because here you can see some of the fountains, the park, the way it's integrated with the structure itself. So at least, I mean, this image gives you the impression, yes, the structure actually existed. Obviously, we're not big on the modesty statues, were we? The alarm just went off, so look out. The X-rated alarm. But I mean, what do you think when you see these fountains and the way this is integrated with the palace itself? Yeah, I agree. Like it was vaporized. I could probably say that to somebody, and if I put it in a book and documented, they might actually believe it. Uh, yeah, it does give that impression, doesn't it, Jacob? Church bells. That's a good one too. This is probably one of my favorite overall images of it because this really gives you an idea of the size and the complexity and the geometric precision of how well it's laid out. Seeing the two water towers. Okay. Yeah, sure, they're water towers. Whatever you say. But then you can also see the tight geometry of how it was laid out, but not just the overview, but also from top to bottom. Something that for some unknown reason the plans don't ever seem to capture, do they? But when you look at a full image of it, you do get the idea. And some of these other structures are pretty impressive too. And we'll get to the individual who supposedly architected this shortly. But I just wanted to take some time to view this image. And as usual, all images will be posted in the usual spot on the channel Reddit once we're done. Yes, it does give that look, doesn't it? Why does that come up all the time? Good point there, Ryan. Probably in the same place they always are. Photo technology was behind when we were flying planes, so they just weren't there. So what we were looking at earlier, RB, I mean, I think it's something more advanced, something that wasn't just glass. And that's why they couldn't leave it standing, because if this were still standing to this day and we could visit it, we could probably determine, this is some sort of material that's a little bit stronger, a lot better than glass. As I am Kyra said earlier, transparent aluminum from Star Trek. Star Trek 4, of course, because that's where it was mentioned. That's where somebody had the creativity to write it and not endlessly reference it. But I'm not going to go down that road. That would be for starters, Cecilia. We need to verify what happened then, and then we can start to look to go back earlier. So good point. Oh, yeah. Very good point there, Robert. Great observation. Classic portal that we tend to see with churches and the church windows, the giant portal windows. Great observation there. And another image after it was reduced to rubble by whatever forces caused it. Fire, sure, okay, whatever. At least we can see the tower a little bit better, but of course, it's obvious that the tower is not crystal. Well, what exactly is this tower made out of? And maybe that was something else. They couldn't have people going to assess or analyze what those towers looked like. Yeah, it is, isn't it? And it's always worth a study and a close look, Elusive Truths, the stained glass. Never a dull moment there. Yep, we're still live, Frank. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, that would be my first thought, Robert. Blimp tower, mooring post. Conflicting accounts, KC933, conflicting accounts. Nope, you caught us. You're on. Wouldn't it be nice to get some legitimate transparent aluminum? Yeah, and there's really no problems with those videos, just like there's no problem with the videos of the construction of the Hoover Dam. If you all want to watch a funny movie that makes you really question things, go back and watch 1952's Invasion USA. Supposedly a Cold War scare flick, but you'll actually see a lot of examples of infrastructure and then references to it that just are really strange. Was it an impress? I guess not. At least not consistently. Yeah, that's very, very true. Our melted reality. But isn't it interesting what they try to pass off as a water tower? I always think of those 3 water towers in St. Louis for whatever reason. Yeah, you're probably right. Now, isn't this interesting? One of the images of the display, supposedly we were very obsessed with Egypt. Because what the heck did Egypt have to do with the Industrial Revolution? Well, everything. So what are your thoughts on this? Look at these figures here. Supposedly a real image and supposedly from the Crystal Palace. Can't verify it. It's burned down. I can't actually go there and tell you, but this is what the image shows. Yeah. My thoughts exactly, RB. What? Uh Oh, don't worry, Nora. We're getting to Joseph. We're getting to Joseph. I'm not bypassing him. There's too many good things to say about old Joseph the architect. He's quite an individual. Yeah, they sure do, Anime Sport. Those are some of my favorite standpipe water towers to look at, as they call them in St. Louis. They also had them in other locations, New York City, off of in Madison, Wisconsin. They had one that they've torn down. So ceremonial status for witchcraft. Yeah, yeah, they sure are, especially fitting in the Crystal Palace like that. Do they? They seem to, or is that the impression that we're given? You know, just like all roads lead to Rome and then Rome leads to Egypt. That seems to be the message that we're given. But why is that? It's a very good point. They were catering to all the tourists from Egypt who were coming to see the Great Exhibition in 1851. I believe they'll tell us this was a subsequent image from another event, but hard to say what's really going on here. And again, you get that impression of the giant portal window. And here's another image just showing the layout. And here you can get its sort of, how shall we say, greenhouse function. And I wonder how effective these were as greenhouses. It would have made an incredible greenhouse, no doubt about it. Got the fountain back there. No shortage of them. Or you could just build at any scale. Good question, RB. Better pull out our map and take a look. Uh, I'm not going to guess Thule, though. Yeah. Who knows, Sean? Who knows? Or what we think of as Egyptians or what we're told. Hard to say. Yeah, I'm not gonna run with that one, Robert, but it's a great comment. Well, yes, originally was trying to look at some of the baseline civilizations, somewhat problematic, but all right, moving on. Now, this is interesting because this was a subsequent exposition, and here we're told that this is supposedly a replica of the Parliament building from Canada. Yes, they decided to build a replica of the Parliament building from Canada in front of the Crystal Palace because it all makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Some of these images you really just have to do a double take on. I mean, it looks pretty legitimate, pretty well sized. It doesn't look like it's some sort of facade. It's made entirely out of stucco and balsa wood and popsicle sticks and these triangular windows. And it was all done in 3 days. I don't know. I'm just looking at this image. It's another baffling image with this Crystal Palace. I had a feeling you'd have a good statement on it there, Jamie. Yes, it does look like the Addams Family home or Maniac Mansion, if anybody ever remembers that one. Toothpicks. Yeah, that's what the columns were, right, Casey? On the inside, they had columns of toothpicks. Yeah, you weren't saying a thing, Dave. You're absolutely right because you know what happened if you said something. Oh, you're questioning the building? Yeah, we've got a little evaluation for you. Your brother told us that you were acting a little strange. So if you're in Iowa, you're going to Mount Pleasant or maybe Cherokee. We got a nice one there too. They are. It's just a question of how do they fit in, what came first. That's where we have a lot of trouble trying to ascertain what did come first. But yes, you do see the Sphinx and the pyramids. And that's why one of the reasons I suspect that the earlier foundation eras are where the Sphinx and the pyramids came from. Maybe even right after the, dare I say, first era. But we can't talk about the first era. So we'll say the second era. But yeah, one of the foundation eras, no doubt about it. There's a reason why there's this constant reverence for pyramids and the Sphinx, and it's seen everywhere. And boy, do they go to some lengths to try to stop you from seeing it. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one, Rebecca. Yes, Christina Ricci. I remember when she was in everything. Oh, another one. You can never get enough of those. Okay, moving on. This was supposedly the sketch that was drawn of it. I just drew a sketch on a napkin. Yeah, they try to sell that one too. Now, isn't this interesting? What do we have here? Another little festival that went on. I think this was from the 1880s. And they just happened to park a very large organ in the middle of it. At least I think it's an organ, but who knows? Maybe it's some other kind of device that emits sound for other functions, some other piece of technology. I mean, you could say you've got four giant industrial level fasces all linked together. What are your thoughts on this device? That's got to be the most amazing thing, aside from all the people that are crowded in this area. This was in the Crystal Palace, allegedly. Looks like it is. Strong likelihood that it is, yes. But what are the details behind it? That's what we were trying to figure out earlier. No, he definitely knew something. There's no doubt about that. I think we're when I get a little bit more research completed on that, I'm putting together some pieces on organs, Jamie. I think we're going to have to do a exploration on that. Maybe live stream, maybe a video. We'll see. At least a video, but I'm thinking it'd be better with a live stream. Yeah, it does give that stadium appearance, doesn't it? Imagine if they still had the Crystal Palace today, then they could do the NFL in the Crystal Palace. You know they'd be all about it. Yeah, that's a good question, Calvin. Let's take a look. Hard to say. Hard to say in this image. Are these real people or is this just backdropped in? I'd say they're real and you're just lacking the detail in the image, but I could be wrong. And they're pulling a Major League Baseball United States 2020 to 2021 because you don't need fans and stands. You can just pipe in sounds and it's the same thing. Sorry, I had to go there. Yeah, just many interesting images that don't make a lot of sense with this one. Wouldn't it be fun, Adam? And imagine what you could do with an organ of this size. Yeah, where's Waldo? So it would seem. Really couldn't tell you. Yeah, it might be for all we know. Who knows what capabilities this had if this is real technology. Oh, the schematics on the New Yorker hotel. I would, but I've run into some trouble with trying to talk about that individual schematics. I'll have to give it another whirl. I don't give up. It's just sometimes it seems like there's opposition to doing things, and then other times there's not. Depends on the timing. Maybe all three, Jamie. I mean, if you think about it, we think of the concept of cymatics as the quote unquote jackknife of all technology. What couldn't it do? Might be the better question. Oh, good comment there, Vaughn. That's true. That's why they always had bells in all the old churches. That's what they say. I had a feeling you were going to say that, Sky Sage. Just had a feeling. Oh, and I also love the fact they have this giant telescope in it. So we just didn't have a giant telescope in the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, good 40 years later. They had this one in 1851. How exactly are you adjusting that? Granted, it's just a drawing. But remember, everybody was into astronomy as an avocation, or during the transition from astrology to astronomy. It was an avocation. Remember that. Now, isn't this interesting? Showcasing one of the first naval guns. And naval gun technology is real. I mean, really, this is the predecessor to all modern guns, modern artillery, what you'd see in World War I, World War II, and still predominantly used to this day. Nope, sorry, United States Army, you never got your Crusader, no matter how much the artillery officers were gushing over it. No mercy missions for you. But you can get an idea of the layout of the palace on the inside and then realizing just how large this gun is. And remember, they had these guns on the naval ships. Now, did they build this or did they find this? Hey, Sooner West, good to see you. You just happen to jump in as I'm waxing about naval guns. What great timing. Bells, towers, organs. Oh, yeah. And no shortage of it, too. And no shortage of scale, different sizes. Oh, yeah. Lovely windows for building artillery. That's a good one, Jay. Uh, yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, I'm doing this one a little different, but it seems to be going just fine. So, iron production and tool making doesn't. Yeah, exactly. And you don't have the ability to mass produce this and consider the colossal size of a lot of these things. And yet there is a connection with this time frame and these structures. So, what to say about it? Not really sure. Yeah, no doubt. All right, Joseph Paxton. Let's get up his information here. So, this was our architect, Sir Joseph Paxton, 3 August 1803 to 8 June 1865. So he didn't get out of his 60s, but again, another individual with many avocations, architect. He was also into growing bananas, and he was really, really good. He was the guy you called if you wanted to build greenhouses. And he was the architect behind the Crystal Palace. Hey, thanks, Dave Frank. I appreciate that. Yeah, Ferrari. No doubt about it. Oh, yeah, he does kind of look like a Confederate general, doesn't he, Chassis? Let's zoom in here a little bit. Like he's got his gray hat, and then he's got his overcoat. Look at the size of the hat, though. Like the hat's about the size of his head. But apparently he was the one who did the sketch on the napkin. Overlord. Yeah, he does kind of give that impression, doesn't he? Oh my goodness. That's a good question, Sean. Because if it was something like transparent aluminum, you could throw stones off the windows and they wouldn't break, they wouldn't shatter. Never a shortage of top hats. Not one bit. Hey, Jennifer, thanks. Appreciate that. Well, remember, this guy was everything. Although what we don't know is, was architect his avocation? Because remember, this was the 1800s. Although I should specify something. Remember how they say everybody was an expert with their avocation or their hobby, but that proved to be more true in the United States. In the United Kingdom at the time, it was the actual professionals because the people who were doing things as an avocation, they sucked. So in the UK, you needed to get the professionals, but in the United States, you could get the people who did it as a hobby. So yeah, I guess that's one for America there, right? Hey, good to see you, Villain. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I have no idea, Jamie. Let's look at some of his other works. So let's see. This is the actual Rothschild residence, and I'm drawing a blank. It's got a very obvious name. I think it's Mentmore Towers. They just call it the Mentmore. So yeah, nice little subtle country house that was built for the Rothschild family. I think I've got the dates on that. Give me 1 second. I'll pop those up. Where do I have that? Here we go. Mentmore Towers, 1852 to 1854. So, as if it's not enough that he built the Grand Crystal Palace, he just happened to build the primary residence for the Rothschild family. And you might recognize this. Yeah. Well, you wouldn't have to worry about a hailstorm if it's transparent aluminum or something stronger, right, Brother Adam? Yeah. And you'll recognize this if you saw the film Batman Begins because this was Wayne Manor. Hey, Vaughn, thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you for being here. Meant more. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it sure is. Hey, Chris, thanks for that. I appreciate it. I'll be getting out to South Dakota relatively soon. Yeah. You and Christian Bale had coffee there, right? No, but it was in Batman Begins. And then what's funny about the Nolan Batman trilogy? You remember that this building burnt down in the first one, and then they rebuilt it by the third one. Yeah, who could build a building like this today? Always one of the issues with it. So that's a good question. I don't think there's any official ties, but it does give that impression, doesn't it? Oh yeah, whatever's under the hills, that's for sure. Yep, they do. Here's the interior. Yeah, just a nice, calm sitting room that you got right there. It's a great saying. Just give it time. Hey, Marion. Yeah, well, some structures are looked after a little bit more than others, if you know what I mean. You can see this phenomenon in California. Just try going into Bel Air when you're not supposed to be there and see what happens. Just try it. No, no, don't, okay? Hey, RB. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I appreciate that greatly. Yeah, it looks good enough to be temporary. No doubt about it. And so it comes down to it, I mean, this is meant more towers and from Mr. Paxton, and these were just some of his capabilities. I mean, he just didn't do crystal towers. He could, or crystal palaces. He could build you country houses. He could build you anything you wanted to, and he could transport bananas and grow the best bananas. So, I mean, really another guy who could do everything in the 1800s because we have no shortage of those. Oh yeah. And he's even got a very subtle monument. I mean, look at this. This isn't your classic obelisk or what you'd typically expect to see. Look at this thing. Paxton Memorial, London Road Cemetery. Definitely on my list when I get back to the great United Kingdom. But yet, you still see some similar touches that you see with a lot of the older cemeteries, wherever you are in the land. Little Gothic touch to it. Looks a little taller and larger in the tree, but I'm not sure. And then this is a funny thing here. So one of the heirs from Scotland. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but supposedly put him on top of a pedestal, and he's got a picture of the plans of the Crystal Palace. I'm kind of surprised they just don't write Crystal Palace on it. And who exactly was dressing like this in the 1800s? Oh yeah. Some appear to be, and some appear to be really schlocky statues that were added later. It goes both ways. This is an interesting one. Yeah, good way to put it there, Julia. Nice pantaloons. You remind me of my favorite civil engineer. That is what she'll always say. Nice pantaloons. Yeah, exactly. RB. So nothing to question here, right? Just a tad bit. Just a tad bit. Here's another perspective of it. And again, it looks almost different from this image as well. We can get an idea of just how large and imposing it really is. So I think we can see the glass open there, or the crystal, or whatever it really was. But yeah, that is a very good point, though. In the images where you can make out the glass or what's filled in, you can see there's virtually no breakage whatsoever. So yeah, no hailstorms, no rocks, no problems, no wind, just a fire, causes unknown. You can see the tower in the back, and interestingly enough, the tower's a little faded here. Hard to say what's going on. Yeah, I'm with you, Julia. It does look more like the 1600s, doesn't it? Hey, Shannon. Well, and that's just it. And they try to tell us, sissy, that it fell out of favor. It was no longer popular by the time the 1900s came along. Nobody cared about it anymore. So it kind of wasted away until it burned down. Ah, yes. Very true. Well, and that's where we wonder about the strength of the material, Stephen. What was it really? And here is the nearby station that fell out of use because there was no Crystal Tower to go to anymore, but the infrastructure's still there. Isn't this intriguing? Especially with all these columns that they have. These hexagonal. This is definitely something I need to explore in person. I would love to analyze and assess the nature of the material, the construction material. I mean, it looks like we got bricks. They're supposedly cleaning this up, but I don't know how far they've come with it. I'll have to take a look at it today. Yeah, maybe. Comets and asteroids. Yeah, I'm with you, RB. Yeah, that's what they're saying, renovating it. Maybe they'll just pick it up and then dust it off with some end dust, and then it's all ready to go. Yeah, I agree, Goddess Thorn. It is very beautiful. So I mean, they could definitely put it back into use. Why not? And just think, as our final image from the Crystal Palace in London, just think about this. So if they could just do a little cleanup, wipe this down, and have this look brand new and serviceable, then does it stand to reason? And let's just say this was built, as they tell us, in the 1850s, 1860s. Then what's it tell us about the strength and the endurance of what was built in the past? How do you defend it? But of course, everyone will say it's because it's what's written in the history books and nobody would ever lie. Of course, nobody would ever lie. What's to be gained by lying? Yeah, I hate to say it. You're probably right, Sean. And it's not just hey, get up and explore with me. That's a great point. It's not just that note, it's also the engineering aspect of it too that defies our ability to match today. Nope. Tend to agree. We definitely can't compare. And just the different coloring of the bricks and the strength of the bricks. That's always important, is to assess the strength of the bricks. Well, we just had all these brick barons in St. Louis. They made all these great bricks. We're not in the United States right now. So, yeah, I've heard that one too. And maybe they had even better glass. It's hard to say. Yeah. It's pretty easy just to shoot it to pieces. Yeah, see, it doesn't take that long to set up bricks, does it, Jimmy B-side? No, you don't, Elusive Truths, unless you want to be looking for another job or not get your grant. That's how history tends to work. Make sure you support the person. If you ever read The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, he'll tell you patronage. That's the key to success. No, 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 not what's right, but patronage. You need to support the right people. Yeah, that's a very good comment too, Vaughn. You know what? I have no idea, Sherman. I mean, I can't give any number of years, and who knows if time was measured the same way. Check out the time paradox video. I can't even afford a guess, and I'm not going to try to. Maybe much more, maybe much less. 1,200 degrees. Still, the real question comes down to is what actually started the fire. So, yeah, we are at the devaluing stage. All right. Well, that's all we have for the Crystal Palace in London. So go ahead and hit the like button. I'm going to transition here real quick. And while I'm transitioning, please hit that like. And we're going to take a look at another Crystal Palace. Give me 1 second here. Now, we don't have as many photos as this one. It's not quite as dramatic, but it's no less impressive. All right. Let's get this up. And can you see this? And does anybody know where we are before I flash it? Yeah, it feels like it, doesn't it? Yeah, it's funny, RB. Are you just trying to flick that nerve with me? Because I actually like that Billy Joe song, and I still can't believe that Fall Out Boy did a cover of that, and I can't stand the cover. Just my opinion, nothing against Fall Out Boy. I can't stand the cover they did of it. It's not even in chronological order, being the tight historian that I am and all. uh, Antarctica. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, Constantinople. France? Ah. Oh, okay. Well, thanks for correcting me on that one. Chassis observant. I'll get in a little closer. Now, I'll give you a hint. This was the same decade as the Crystal Palace in London. So, who else would be building a Crystal Palace? Yeah, USA. We're in the USA. Oh, you're close, Frank. You're close. But who always competes with Chicago? Elusive Truth is on it. Yes, New York. Well, thanks, unearned opinion. I appreciate that. Let me get the banner up on this one. So, this is the Crystal Palace in New York. Built 1853, burned in 1858. Yes, another Crystal Palace that was a burn casualty. No, no, not Iowa this time, Sky Sage. I can't always be in Iowa. Though it seems like I am, doesn't it? So we're in New York. Built 1853, burned 1858. Again, for another exposition, again to feature the achievements of the Industrial Revolution. No, this one isn't Annette, although it seems like it, doesn't it? And you might notice the very impressive tower that's right there. That tower is 315 feet tall. I couldn't really get good dimensions on this Crystal Palace itself, and Old World New York did a pretty good video about it. Give that a whirl if you can. But what I do know is they tell us the diameter of the dome was 100 feet. So probably maybe 1/3, 1/4 the size of the Crystal Palace in London that we just looked at, but still pretty impressive. The lattice tower is interesting as well. And this is what they called it, the Latin Observatory, the Observatory Saloon, 315 feet tall, and it was supposedly made out of wood reinforced by iron. That's what they told us. What do you think this looks like? And I know we're getting off from the Crystal Palace a little bit, but this was constructed in conjunction with it, allegedly. And what do you think this would be used for? Ah, yes. Yeah, gasoline, anything else flammable, no doubt about it. Yeah, early radio tower, maybe. Airship dock, all the above. Kind of reminds me of the lattice towers on the battleships. The U.S. battleships had suddenly appeared prior to World War I and then were repurposed. World War II, or at least refitted, I should say. I don't mean repurposed, refitted. They were always meant to be battleships, supposedly. But they had them. U.S. South Carolina. So the same tower design until it blew over in the wind, and then they replaced them with the tripods. Now, what's strange about this is they said that they designed these battleships because they thought the shells would pass through these. Really, the shells are going to pass through this, and then they wouldn't stand up to the wind. So, really, really strange account on that. All right, we're going to take a break for 2 minutes. I will be right back. Let me get up the break banner. Be sure you hit that like button, and I will be right back. We are on intermission. Take your 2-minute break. Okay, we are back and continuing. Thanks, everybody. I'm always on a nice little coffee break about midway. What I used to try to do is about 45 minutes into class, give everybody a little bit of a break. Usually I do it every 30 minutes, actually, because students told me that they grew up on sitcoms, so their attention span was 30 minutes. That's where that came from. So, anyway, giving you a chance to all get back. And this is one of the images that we have of the New York Crystal Palace. Now, was this the glass or was this the more advanced crystal? They called it a crystal palace. You can see we've got another little portal window here. But interesting towers. And I mean, these little towers here are certainly not crystal. And so it gives you the impression it's something much more. Also interesting looking at how New York City allegedly looked during that time frame. So very interesting. And of course the dome, and remember it's 100 feet dome in diameter. Yeah, run your horse and buggies out in front of it. The same people that built this. Yep. Don't question it. I've got horses, and apparently I could build a crystal palace with my horses. So what am I waiting for, right? Good question. Okay. That seems to be the way we're going, doesn't it, Frank? I was saying, why don't you make TikTok videos? Because I mean, and look, I'm not denigrating anybody who makes a short video. I just know I can't do it. That's my limitation. No problem, Battlestar. No problem. Yeah, plexiglass or some sort of advanced polymer, even, for all we know. Ooh, fractal generator. That's a good one. Now, we don't really have a lot of images of this particular crystal palace. Oh, this is a good comment here before I move on. My biggest conundrum is trying to mesh the evidence of architecture with written history. Could written history be so much of a lie that evidence of the tech and skills to build this are erased? To answer your question directly, yes, it could be. Because I can prove to you that there's constant historical revision. All you have to do is just look at how the studies of World War II have changed. Read a book called Enemy at the Gates by William Craig, written in the early 1970s. Compare and contrast it with any book written about World War II in the 2000s. You would expect the book written in the 1970s to be more accurate because it's closer to when the event happened. But what you'll be told by all the current authors is that William Craig, the author of Enemy at the Gates, didn't know what he was talking about. He believed a lot of propaganda, but we've been able to sort it out in the more recent era. And of course, they'll say we have access to formerly declassified Soviet sources, blah, 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 blah. That's what they'll try to say. That's just one example, and they do that about every topic, constantly revising everything. Yeah, that does seem to be a good use for geometry too. Harnessing energy, channeling it, storing it. But yeah, at the end of the day, we don't really have a clue. We don't know. All right, let's see what I got for more images here. So another perspective of it, yeah, just paintings and drawings, but looks like it's very impressive. Here you can see these towers a little bit more intricately. I do have one image of this, although what to make of it. Here is the image. Now we'll start by looking at the building itself. So again, you get the impression, is this just glass? And this is New York City. We have a good idea of the weather in New York City. Here you can see the towers. Very interesting. But even the dome itself, like fine little portal windows on the dome. All this again for an exhibition, little cupola up here, and even the cupola is pretty ornate. So while this might not be as large as the one in London or anywhere close to it, it does have some intricacies to it that are pretty impressive. But then you contrast that with this little shack right here. Oh, and then we have an individual with a top hat who's doing the old blocking stance with the knee out. Yes, of course we do. But even the road back here, like you can see a little bit of a cobblestone road. What have we got, an actual sidewalk or is it a boardwalk sidewalk? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, this looks paved back here in the fence area. Oh yeah, great technology of the 1850s. Hey, it's New York, no problem. Don't ask any questions about it. Well, yeah, you need to have a shack. It is a 5-star shack. Maybe that's where that guy with the top hat lives. Abe had to go personally inspect it. I mean, granted, it was before he was president, but he was around. That's a good point, Chassis. Believe me, years of looking into this, Larry, I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface. I learn something new. I learn more new every minute that I do this than I did in years of academia. Maybe that's just me. Oh, yeah. Well, and you get that all the time. I mean, what's going on with the sky and the flags? Just don't ask. Well, of course, Jason. I mean, that's why it burned down. They'll tell us that it was temporary. Critical thinker, good to see ya. Oh, yeah. And that's the contrast that you have on it. That's the contrast that you have. I mean, here you have this incredible large structure, very geometrically precise, very ornately designed. Maybe, I mean, are these windows dirty? Hard to say. Looks like they are. Or are they different colors that we just can't get in the photo? I mean, we've got these fancy lights, this fence, and then in front of it, you got a very temporary shack with a guy with a top hat. I mean, you just can't make this up. Looks like we got a very elaborate fountain back here. I mean, what gives? I mean, why would they leave this shack standing? Well, they'll say, well, the World's Fair was over. And then we said, yeah, you can build your shack here on the block right next to it. Makes sense. Because it's not like we didn't have space in the 1800s. I mean, there was a real premium of space, apparently. I mean, it's New York City and all, so get your shack in there. But yeah, it's one of the few pictures of it. Well, that's kind of something that you see, Frank. The Love Shack. Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. All right, I'm going to keep moving. It'll be on Reddit, don't worry. And then it burned down in 1858. Again, reasons unknown. Again, how does it burn? Not sure. Oh, look at that. You got the fire brigade involved there. Strange, though. I don't really see any horses, but maybe they were just people. So I guess there were just hundreds or thousands of people standing around New York City who just decided to stand around and watch this thing burn to the ground. I mean, maybe. Another unfortunate loss. Here's one of the interior images that we have. And remember, this was for an exposition hall, supposedly. But again, the portal window, the dome. So just think, if this was a fourth era building from the Tartarian civilization or the civilization that preceded ours, whatever we want to call it, the monument builders civilization, then think of this as more of their version of a scaled down building, more of a, I don't want to say temporary building, but building built for different purposes. Maybe it was close to something like that. Maybe it was for healing. Maybe it was just for meeting. And yet a structure like this still exceeds anything that we build today. You don't see anybody calling any skyscraper today a Crystal Palace or a Crystal Tower, do you? No. Yes, exactly, Sherman. Very good point. Oh, is that an escalator? Is it? Does kind of give that impression, doesn't it? That fancy moving sidewalk in 1893 and an escalator in 1853. Because why not? Indeed. This is about the only image that we have of the interior. I mean, it's a very poor image, but it does give you some believability that this once existed. Although, who knows? Nothing to dwell on here. And then this final painting of it. So, not many images, but what exactly do we have going on here? Maybe one of you have heard of what this is. Now, granted, it's just a painting. It could be anything. Yes, I always say that. But you're looking at your representation of New York City from the 1850s. So, very strange. Minimal imagery on this. Aha! You got it. Water reservoir. That's officially what we're told that it is. Yep. Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't call it the Water Palace there, Stephen. Hey, Cindy. Yeah, fish, water reservoir. It's your fish palace. You can call it that. Ooh, saltwater battery. Mm. Oh yeah, they're all over the place. Everywhere you look in the land, you got the same structures, the same stories. Nephilim footbath. Not the clowns though, right, Vaughn? Yeah, without a doubt. Croton Reservoir, demolished before 1900. Yes. And yet it's got architecture on it that looks like it's something from the civilization I just explored today with all the pitfalls. Still remnants of it there, supposedly. Yeah, isn't that a good question? I was wondering when someone was going to state that. Couldn't get the water out. I don't know. It's really strange, though, when you start to put all these pieces together. Oh, the vehicles. Yeah, just horse and carriage is what it looks like. Boats out to sea. So, anyway, that concludes the New York City Crystal Palace. But we've got one more we're going to take a look at. And I'll just tell you right where it is, the Palacio de Cristal in Madrid. So let me get that image up. Give me 1 second here. Crystal Palace, Palacio de Cristal. Although I won't start with the palace itself. I'll actually start with a nearby image here. Hold on. Now we're in Madrid. And doesn't this look rather familiar? This little monument that's not too far from it. Where have we seen this kind of styling before? So yeah, nice little monument that's near the what we're told in English is the Glass Palace. Oh no, of course they wouldn't, Marion. Why would they do a crazy thing like that? Yeah, Battlestar. I hear Jeremy Irons saying that now. The fat cats, Sam, the fat cats. Does look like Berlin, yeah. One in Berlin. There's also one in St. Petersburg that we looked at, although the centerpiece is quite a bit different. Oh, yeah. Pretty much everywhere. You're all correct. A little bit of a trick question. Hey, Brett. Well, take care of yourself. Thanks for joining us. What's up with these crescents of columns? Yeah, and you get a lot of them. What I'm going to point out real quick before we actually look at the Crystal Palace here is some of the devices here that are on it. It kind of reminds me, I know I keep going back to it, but the soldier and sailors monuments that you see, almost as though you get the impression that some of these were added later. And officially they were. They had to be when they built it, however they originally built it. But of course, we have our usual slew of lions and fairies and nymphs and gods and goddesses. But we'll say, yeah, it's Spain. The Romans were there. It all makes sense. Okay, fine. So be it. So here it is, the Glass Palace. I'm not kidding. That's what they try to tell us it's called. Even though Palacio de Cristal translates to Palace of Crystal. And this is a bona fide one from the 1800s, supposedly built in the 1880s and featured in the Philippines Exposition in 1887 in Spain, because remember, Spain was in the Philippines at that time, or so we're told. But I think you might have a chance of actually getting an idea of what these were constructed out of. Or maybe because this is a different structure, they replaced this with more, how shall we say, modern glass. I don't know. But you do get some of the construction cues with the columns here that there was something a lot more to this. I mean, we've got old Mr. Lionhead right here, and a little arch. And this was featured in the opening video, although to be honest with you, it's very hard to find footage of this. I can't imagine why. Here's another look at that monument that's right next door to it, and you can see it from the other side. Not exactly the best picture, but you know what happens when I use all HD images. Bad things happen, so just giving you an idea of it. But I did get some good pictures of the Crystal Palace itself, the Palacio de Cristal. Look at those columns. Yeah, definitely a wedding venue, no doubt about it, or whatever else you want for it. But perhaps this can give you an idea of what the true opulence of those old crystal palaces really were. Yeah, no doubt. Does give that indication. No, it's not to be scrutinized. That's why it's a glass palace, okay? I don't care what Spanish translates to. It's a glass palace. It's kind of the impression they give us. Yeah, it does have a Rivendell look to it, doesn't it, Vaughn? Completely agree. Yeah, very fancy one. Yeah, butterfly sanctuary. Those are always fun to go to. And it looks pretty in winter too. And it looks like it stands up just nicely in winter. But you can get an idea of the different colorings on it, and that's always something else we have with old world buildings is how much the color tends to vary. Really pretty area, and again, you do get that impression of the amalgamation of the artificial with the natural. Something else that seems to reflect the old world structures. Little image in summer. Yeah, but just very pretty little building. Now, just imagine how this would have looked different. I mean, I think this is glass. I think this is more modern glass, and that's why this edifice has been allowed to stand because they've stated they've renovated a couple times. You got the old, I'll just laugh when I say this, weather vane on the top of it to catch lightning. Oddly enough, I saw in the news recently there was a church, I think it was in Owatonna, Minnesota, where they said that the weather vane saved the church from catching fire because it caught the lightning bolt. I'm not kidding. I think you can still look it up now. So, yeah, they're still saying the same things now. Yep, Jennifer, it is still standing. You can still go there and see it to this day. One of three that is. Yeah, I agree, Maureen. It would be nice if they did. We made one, it would blow down. That's good. I think so, Cindy. I think so. And, if you had something like a more advanced crystal, or as we jokingly called it, transparent aluminum, there's no doubt about it. It would be a great way to actually get the light for your crops, but then protect them from the elements. I mean, just think of how useful that would be. And imagine a structure that could stand up to the worst of the weather, whether it's hail, tornadoes, or anything. So, we always talk about how the old world buildings had that capability. Yeah, no doubt about it. It does give that feeling of light manipulation. So just a completely different structure, completely different purpose. Lucky that we still have this one still standing. So if you go to Spain, highly recommend it. Like even this image here on the interior, you can see a little bit more of the ornate detail on it. And then this one. I mean, right here. Come on. Why would this be necessary or done on something that's just a simple conservatory or what we think of as a greenhouse? I mean, come on. Oh, sure. They just had all the time in the world. They decorated it. That's what they did. All right. Ooh, angel power enhancement machine. That's a good one. Quartz. Oh, yeah. Probably have things a lot worse than that, Laura. Yeah, Victorian biosphere. That's a good way to put it. And yet, here's our older image of it from the 1800s, right after they built it. And yet, somehow, I don't know, did they need to clean it up a little bit? And why do I get the impression that maybe they had the original crystal here? I mean, I could be wrong. It's just an impression, it's a speculation. I don't know. But for some reason, it looks a little different in this older image. But what are your thoughts? No, that's very true. Oh, yeah, you got to have the spire on the roof. Got to catch the lightning bolts, right? Oh, yeah. Definitely a large glass dome. So many possibilities with this particular structure. Hmm. Isn't it? Does give that impression. This is one of my favorites because here you can actually see the base here. So it looks like you got a brace of concrete or base of concrete or something we think of as concrete. Then you go to brick, and then you go up to this, and then up to the columns in the main structure. So yeah, not just your every run of the day greenhouse. No way. Yep, it still exists in Spain. Nope, no fire yet, but good question, Casey. Need a lot of Windex if that's window, but hey, we've got our window clean scrapers, right? I mean, it could be the original article, the original material. Probably, Cindy. Probably. No, not here. Rain-X, yeah. Whatever version of it. I like this image because here you can get an idea of how it is harnessing the sun a little bit. So maybe, just maybe, there are some original materials that are actually in what we'd consider the glass. But I don't know. I'd have to get there in person. Maybe it's just a good photo. You know how it is. The only way to know for sure is to be there in person and really analyze it. Yes. I don't know. Maybe even something more advanced than glass or quartz. Stated to be in Madrid. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me just verify the exact location for you. Palacio de Cristal del Ritorio. It is in Madrid, not too far from the city center, right in the park. So if you're in Madrid, I suggest you hit it up. I was thinking of taking the airship, but hey, what's our real story? Thanks for joining us. Now, here's another one. And so I think it gives you an idea of what the function of these was originally intended to be. But who's to know for sure? Just a very odd structure for someone just to build in the 1880s for comfort. Yeah, definitely better not be magnifying glass. Mm. Well, and the other thing is, whether it's photos or video, we've had that capability very, very long time. Find that photo of the I need to show it at a live stream, the Wisconsin State Capitol, 1932, when it collapsed, and they admit, yep, it's a fake photo. Oh yeah. Don't know, Jamie. There is precious little detail on the construction time on it. They say 1880 sometime, and it was ready to go by 1887. That's about all you can really find. And that it replicates the great work of the Crystal Palace in London. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that one, Nick. Good call out there. Well, thanks for joining us, Ann, and thank you, Elusive. Yeah, it could be an alchemy or some sort of process that we don't understand with the materials and the energies and utilizing them together to achieve that effect. That's probably as good of a summary as any. All right, so that's the last one for the Palacio de Cristal, or as we translate it to English, Glass Palace. If you wonder why I make fun of words so much, this is one of the reasons, because we always play this little game on words and languages. I had a 10 by 12 glass atrium, and the temperature control was impossible. The hell you say, Adam. To hell you say. I'll have to look into that, Cindy. I mean, we'll have to come back to Crystal Palaces. This won't be our last look. I looked a little bit, but nothing really came up. They may have one. Let's look at some other examples, though. Give me 1 second. So, a couple other Crystal Palaces. I just pulled up two, but believe me, there are many more. One which is old world, and one which we're told is current era. So, stop sharing, share screen. It's coming up in 1 second. And this is from Montreal. Now, does this really look like a Crystal Palace to you? Told 1860s on this one, and you'll never guess what happened to this one. I'll give you a hint, it's not there. So if it's not there, what happened to it? It is and it isn't, Stephen. It is and it isn't. You can find a lot of meddling with words, but if you actually have control over what words came down and what languages were passed on, you can suddenly realize that they can be very manipulated. I'll have to take a look at that. I'll be in that area soon, Julia. Thanks for sharing. So Montreal, 1860s, Canada's version of a crystal palace that's not very crystal. Destroyed by snow. No, but the snow didn't save it from the fire. This didn't even reach the 1900s. Yeah, they're all spontaneously combustible. Because what are you going to do? I mean, really, I don't see, maybe unless the windows, that's the crystal. I mean, are these windows boarded up or blocked up? Hard to tell. So it looks like there's a lot more material in this one. A little bit more of the same portal windows, but yeah, burned down. And here is the modern one, the Infomart in Dallas, Texas. And I wouldn't dare show you a high definition image of this one. But this was built, I think it was in the 1960s, so very much current civilization era, very much windows in that, but you can see they still replicate the patterns. But then looking at this, does this match anything that we just looked at from the 1800s? Yeah, bit or brick. I don't know. I'll put it up and let y'all come to your own conclusions. Isn't it funny how that works out? It's always a fire. No money, you didn't miss the Corn Palace. But I'm thinking I'm going to have to go take another look at those as well in a live stream. Looked at them before, but maybe just a live stream buying Corn Palaces, because there's actually a lot more documentation, photos of Corn Palaces than there are of Crystal Palaces. I wonder why. Well, it's coming, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm in Roboto. Yeah, I'm having some. I'm having some connection issues, so I'm probably crossing the line. There we go. Now it's catching up. All right. Well, with these technical issues that suddenly just decided to come up, this is the last image anyway, so they're a little late. But I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for joining and providing all of the wonderful feedback. And I will get most of these, if not all of them, posted up on the Reddit. And we'll have some more explorations coming soon this week. And we'll definitely be coming back to look at more Crystal Palaces. So, oh, yeah. And they supposedly modeled it after the Crystal Palace in London, Cindy. So, well, good. I'm glad you all joined it. And I'm glad the powers that be enabled me to give you a proper goodbye, because I really appreciate everything that you contribute. So, well, thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining us at the end. So, well, thanks, Risha. I appreciate that. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. Well, we'll be back soon. I have a little bit of a surprise topic coming up for you. Doggone it, Robert, stop it. You're spoiling the surprises here, okay? Oh, well, my pleasure. I hope you all have a great week wherever you are in the land, and thank you for joining us. And check out the channel Reddit if you want to see the images and analyze them yourself. And by all means, feel free to comment there, comment wherever, and share alike. That's how we'll get to the bottom of this. All right. Well, I hope you all take care and enjoy. And this is Lucius Aurelian signing off.